Thank you everyone for joining me, and thank you to Reconnect Festival for hosting. I'm really pleased that you can all join me over the next probably 20 to 25 minutes as we talk about new models of live musical performance. So I'm sure it goes without saying to pretty much everyone here that COVID has dealt a devastating blow to the live performance industry. And it's important before we begin to state that it's a blow that many artists, venues, and organizations across the world will really struggle to recover from, if at all. We've also felt a huge loss as lovers of live performance, not only for the live experience itself, but also for the communities which form around it, the intrinsic sense of belonging we feel in our favorite creative spaces, the discovery of the unexpected and the new. Live music was always far greater than just the spectacle, far more than just performer and viewer, stage and audience. But over this past year of limitations and restrictions, I believe that we've sought imaginative solutions that stretch beyond simply solving a problem and into actually innovation, showing potential new models for live performance, greater audience engagement, and a more global inclusivity. So with this presentation, my aim is to really just offer a brief snapshot of some of these events, which I personally found really exciting. And through this, hopefully create a space where we can learn from our experiences over the past year and imagine what new models of live performance and inclusive engagement might look like. So firstly, I would like to say that the events I'll be talking about mainly have a general focus on music. This is only because it's the field that I'm most familiar with as a practitioner and as a fan, but it's absolutely not to say that these innovations and these experiments are only happening with music. And if anyone has any ideas in any other fields, then please do get in touch. My email's at the top and I'd love to hear from you. Also, feel free to use the chat function throughout if you want to share ideas or share upcoming events that are interesting or events from the past year. Yeah, so please feel free to have a conversation about that throughout, and that would be really nice to see. So before we go any further, I'll just briefly discuss my own topic, my own relationships to these topics. So firstly, I am a musician and live performer myself, and I make and release music under the name Days Like Television. I'm also a researcher, especially interested in free improvisation and experimental music, as well as the spaces which host and the communities which form around them. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, I'm also, of course, a lifelong lover of music and of live performance. Live music has been central to my life since I was a teenager, yet it still really took me by surprise how much I've missed it over the past year, how much of a lack I felt in its absence. And I'm sure a lot of you feel exactly the same. At the same time, I've really enjoyed engaging with these new digital models of performance. So I would like to start there with a couple of short examples. So Tusk, so firstly, I'd like to go to Tusk Festival. Tusk is an experimental music festival based in Newcastle and Gateshead, which is in England. It happened over September and October of 2020. And it was one of the first festivals I was aware of and I engaged with that was fully presented through digital platforms. And the first clip I'd like to play from Tusk is of an artist called Yanjun, who is a brilliant and really interesting musician from Beijing. I believe I'm showing my sound, but if there's any issues, don't worry too much. It's only a minute video and I can post the link. So yeah, I'll quickly play it and then we'll take it from there. So that was Jan Jun. Apologies if the video was a bit unclear there. I'll post the link afterwards in the chat, and if you have the time, you can watch it to get a much better idea. But I hope you enjoyed it anyways, and I'd love to see your opinion. Personally, I found this quite mesmerizing when I watched it. I love how his vocal drones sort of merge in kind of uncanny and strangely beautiful ways with the mechanical sounds, the jilts, the stutters, the hums of the elevator. I also like the idea that if you close your eyes, there would be certain points in this video where it would be unclear where the human voice ends and the mechanical voice begins. So although it's really quite a simple performance in terms of concept and delivery and execution, I think it holds quite a subtly powerful message, and it stayed with me in a way that I can't put my finger on ever since watching it. It probably also goes without saying that a performance like this wouldn't be possible in standard event spaces, not only for the fact that he is in an elevator, but also thinking about how quiet it is. By being able to bypass the need for amplification and PA systems, it means that Yon can interact with the space around him in an entirely new way, where his sounds as a performer are intrinsically and deeply embedded into the environment itself. So the second clip that I would like to play from Tusk is a short section of a video by Duma, who are a noise duo from Kenya, now based in Uganda. I should also say that this video is quite a lot louder than the last video, so I would maybe recommend lowering your volume just in case. But yeah, it's only a minute long, so we'll take it afterwards. I hope that wasn't too intense for a Monday. And for me, this video and Duma, I think Duma are great, by the way. I think they released an album last year, which I would recommend checking out because I think it's really cool. And for me, this video is an example of really making the best out of limitations, thinking about what can be done with a small, non-professional environment and setup to deliver a performance that is really powerful and really immersive. And it's funny that something as simple as a night vision lens in front of the camera can really make this piece incredibly haunting and unnerving and really unique when combined with the sounds. And what I love about these two clips together, both Duma and Jianjun, is that although they provide a completely different experience as a viewer, they both in their own ways seem to take performance right down to its very core. What can I create in this space? How can we be present together in spite of the distance and connect as artists and audience? Of course, I'm sure that for many artists who have live streamed over the past year, it seemed like a limitation. Yeah, for audiences, I believe it's also offered a strange sense of intimacy and comfort in spite of this enforced distance. We are seeing artists create in their own spaces, and we are witnessing incredibly exciting performances made with very few materials. Furthermore, Tusk and many other events use integrated digital messaging services, which allowed viewers to talk directly to participating artists and programmers, as well as fellow fans. And it was really nice to see this constant global conversation happening throughout the 2 weeks of Tusk, especially considering that the communities which form around experimental music can often seem quite exclusionary, quite closed, and to put it bluntly, are very predominantly very male as well. And then coming just after Tusk was Krakow's Unsound Festival, which I just want to very briefly touch upon. Unsound had a similar feel and structure at Tusk, but it placed a little more emphasis on discourse. So there was lots of creative lectures, panel discussions, as well as a strong sense of collaboration between venues and organizations. And I think this was a really great example of a festival taking this period, this enforced distance, this break from the norm, as an opportunity to question not only how events could adapt, how they could adapt as a festival, but also how events as a whole could be reimagined for the future. For example, the picture on the right is of Jaylin, who is a really amazing electronic musician, and she's also a really interesting talker, talking about sort of creative practice in COVID-19 times. And a lot of this content is still available on their website, and I believe they're still hosting new events. So I would recommend having a look if you have the time. So the last event that I'd like to broadly cover is CTM's is Berlin CTM Festival. Now, CTM was in January 2021, so they had a little bit more time to plan and adapt, and also I imagine a slightly bigger budget as well. And unlike Tusk Festival, which exemplified how the small and the intimate could be innovative, CTM went on a wider, more expansive route, and they did this through a virtual reality platform called Siberia. So for those of you who aren't aware, I'll quickly show a snippet of the Siberia trailer, and then have a short discussion about it. Cool. So just in case anyone wasn't able to watch the video, basically in Siberia, in this virtual platform, viewers used an avatar to explore the multidisciplinary CTM festival in an immersive virtual reality space. And for me, it felt like Siberia and CTM felt like more than just an imaginative solution to restrictions. It was not attempting to stand in for physical spaces, but instead offer something completely different. And in doing so, I believe they not only created a festival that was, simply really exciting as an audience member, but also perhaps offered a slightly better model, a slightly more progressive and advanced model for audience inclusivity and engagement. As I touched a little bit upon earlier, the physical spaces which host experimental music are typically small, often hard to find, and for many within the scene, this can be viewed as part of its charm. In Japan, for example, noise venues are typically 3 floors underground, like deep in the basements of nondescript corporate buildings with little to no signposting. It adds a level of otherworldliness. You are a sense of escapism almost. You're leaving the real world, the outside world, and you're entering our territory. In my personal experience, as well as through discussions I've had with others and talks I've had, I found that this can form really tight-knit and productive communities, but at the same time, it can certainly also be incredibly daunting and seem quite exclusionary, especially considering that the audiences in these spaces are unfortunately predominantly male and often the performers as well. And I think that's one of the reasons I believe it's so important to learn from these virtual platforms and to build upon them. With this in mind, I'd like to read these quotes from Jorge van de Wieneke, who is the founder of Club Matroska. Club Matroska is a virtual Minecraft club that teamed with CTM in Siberia during the CTM festival. I felt like there was a void to be filled by creating a space that welcomes all walks of life, genders, and neurotypes. people that didn't want to go out because they're worried about being perceived in a certain way. Club Matroska gives them the space to be free and comfortable. You can somewhat curate how you want to present yourself without being judged because everyone is allowed to be whatever they want. And I think that comment brings us nicely forward towards our present day, where across the world, we are cautiously edging towards our first physical performances. Depending on where you are, perhaps the distancing rules have already been relaxed. And if so, I'm very happy for you, and I hope you're keeping safe, and I hope you saw some good performances. So I think that this time and the state we're in now is a good moment for us as artists, as researchers, and as fans to imagine and to think about ways that we can move forward collectively together. Because it is absolutely true that certain elements of physical performance can't be replicated and their return will be joyous. But certain features of digital events or virtual events need to continue, and certain lessons built upon and further developed over the coming years. For example, knowing that models have been created which allow for greater inclusion, such as CTM Siberia, we must ask ourselves who can benefit from these innovations, who was left behind in our pre-pandemic understanding of performance, who might feel uncomfortable or underrepresented, or that the space is simply not for them. I also believe that the increasing interdependency between artist, venue, and audience must also continue if you wish to creatively prosper within live music's fragile infrastructure. Following Unsound's example, we might consider what else a venue or a festival might offer and how public discourse can shape its program and overarching goals. Because I believe that by providing not only performances, but also workshops, talks, and exhibitions, these environments could become creative hubs integral to a much wider community and therefore more resilient to the challenges which existed long before COVID and will exist long after. So where do we go? How can we become more global, more connected, more interdependent, and creatively prosperous? Bearing in mind what we have spoken about today about inclusivity and outreach, I certainly don't feel it's my place as an individual man to give definitive solutions or answers. I believe it has to be a collective conversation. We have to move forward together, and it has to be an open discussion where we invite those whose voices are not represented or people who feel disenfranchised or rejected by the scenes, the organizations, or the festivals that we are part of. And I truly hope that as we move towards physical events again, that these discussions will, and I think that they will happen because certain elements I believe will start look slightly outdated, slightly archaic now that a lot of people have had these experiences of digital communication, digital events, digital interaction. So yeah, I do believe this conversation begins, because it also really needs to begin as well, not begin, but more develop. But just to end this section of the presentation, I will say that I do believe there are incredible potentials when we harness technology for our own good as creatives and as communities, and exciting, engaging, and inclusive possibilities of combining the physical and the digital. So this last slide just includes my references, some things that I really enjoyed looking at in planning this talk and in researching this area. If you have time, then I would especially probably recommend, I thought the Yan Jun article, Perhaps I'm Not a Sound Artist, was really illuminating. It didn't really, not particularly relate to the theme of performance, but it was more about sound art and its sound art and contemporary culture. But I really enjoyed that, so I would highly recommend that. I think all that leaves me to say is that I would love to continue this further in the Reconnect backyard. If you want to have a casual chat, if you have any questions, then that would be good. But yeah, apart from that, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for Reconnect Festival for hosting. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.